Zoom into books. Rick Robinson here at the American Library Association on the premier author network on the internet, and that is Zoom into books. We are here at a great event with the American Library Association in Philadelphia, and our guest right now, Tracy Ripley. Tracy Ripley has wrote a wonderful book called Prayerful Warrior Mom. Now you got to say it slowly because when you try and say it all together, it kind of jumbles up. Prayerful Warrior Mom. This is a memoir, right?
Yes, it is.
Tell me a little bit about how you have this interesting story of how everything intersected at the same time. Give me a little bit about that background of how this book came to be.
Sure. So I was coming up in corporate America. I was moving up in the finance world and had just taken on a higher level position when I had my youngest son, who was born with a congenital heart disease. And it was a surprise. It was not something they detected before birth. We didn't know until he was 14 hours old. And so I was then thrust into a world of not only balancing being a career mom with raising children, but also a mom who was trying to raise a child facing a medical crisis.
How do you get into that? I mean, as the father of 3 children, I can't imagine how at birth you're suddenly faced with that, and immediately you have to come really full face with your faith, don't you?
Absolutely.
How do you turn to God at that point and go, "Hey, guy, I'm here. What's going on?"
Yes, it brought me to my knees very early on. It was a shock because we had no signs. No one in our family prior to that had been diagnosed with something like this. And I think for me, a pivotal moment was when my son was 5 weeks old. He was in heart failure and had been in heart failure for 8 days. In fact, I had been to the pediatrician 2 times during that 8-day time frame with concerns, thinking there was something wrong. You know, as a mom, you have an instinct and you know there's something that's not right or something that's changed with your baby. And I kept saying, you know, something is not right. He's breathing funny. So it was by God's grace, I was at the pediatrician or at the cardiologist when it was a routine checkup, and they said, "Your son needs to be admitted. He is very sick." And I found out later that at that point, he had 12% heart function. He was clinging to life for another 27 hours, even after being admitted, because he was not even strong enough to face surgery. They had to get his heart to a level where...
And he ends up having 8 surgeries, right?
Yes, over a 10-year period, he has had 8 different surgeries, 10 different procedures, but 8 total surgeries.
Wow.
Yes.
That again, testing your faith to the max, right?
Yes.
How do you get to that? How do you get to that point? Now, I had an adult son who had cancer,
Okay.
and I know what happens at that point. But I mean, you're sitting there with a baby. You're not ready for this. How do you get to the point of believing in faith?
Yes. So the night that my son was clinging to life, I had to put all of my trust and belief in God and turn all of it over to Him and say, whatever is your will, you know, because you have no control. We have no control. And quite honestly, at that point, even the doctors had no control. They were giving him medicine to try to get stabilized. But it was in God's hands at that point, and He held on to my son's hand for 27 hours before he walked into that surgery. And when those doors closed behind him, I knew that my son was with God, and whatever was going to happen in that operating room, and if my son was coming home with me, that was all up to God. And I truly had to surrender and give my faith in Him.
So, for people that are facing this, I mean, this is a horrendous situation. I can't imagine being a parent of a newborn facing that. What tips What will somebody who is going through this or has gone through this, what will they gain from reading your book? Tell me a few things,
Sure.
a few ideas that they can garner from this book.
So I wrote my book actually for the mom the mom I was 12 years ago when I needed this book and could not find it. So a lot of the lessons I share are helping people understand that you have to take care of yourself because you can't take care of anyone else if you don't. If you're on the airplane and they tell you to put your own mask on first before you help someone else. Well, it's true, and I had to learn that the hard way because being in the hospital with my son, a lot of times I did not even want to go out of the room. I didn't go and get water, and I wasn't drinking enough. So I ended up getting an infection because I was dehydrated, and so I learned to take care of myself.
That's a great analogy, though, to put your own mask on first.
Yes, and right? I mean, they tell you that on the airplane all the time. So there's a reason.
So what did you do if you had gone through this again? What would you have done to put your own mask on first?
Well, I would have remembered that my health and my physical well-being was just as important to taking care of my son as it was for my own self, because I couldn't take care of him if I was sick, right? And I mentioned that I was a finance executive, so I was working and had a lot of things on my plate at work, and was working a 60 and 70-hour work week. So very early on, I had to learn how to say no, to push back and do it respectfully. And I also had to learn how to set healthy boundaries. And those lessons that I learned as my finance career helped me to be an advocate for my son when I had to push harder and say, no, something is wrong. This is not, I've not seen this before. Something's changed in him. Or talking with the nurses. So I was able to be an advocate for my son because he was an infant. He couldn't speak for himself. I was his advocate. I was his voice. And I had to learn that. And so I think a lot of the lessons I learned through my career helped me to be that voice for him and to speak up and to do it respectfully. To also say no, and it's okay to say no. You're allowed to say no. And what I mean by that is I can say that both from a career perspective, where someone's asking me to run some report that's going to take me hours, and maybe I'm going to have to stay late at work and miss time with my family, and saying, well, you needed this 2 weeks ago, why are you just asking me for this today? So helping them to understand and set that boundary, but also at home, when my son was an infant, we were not allowed to let him get sick. So if someone came over to visit and they're coughing and, well, this is not going to be the day for you to stay and visit. I'm going to need you to come back when you're healthy. And sometimes moms are a little bit too nice, or they want to be people pleasers and say, oh, it's okay, just, maybe you don't hold the baby. No, that was not an option. You need to come back another time because I can't risk my son's health because you want to come visit him. You'll have to just do that another time. And so those kind of lessons are what I share in my book that we went through.
And your book, by the way, one of the great organizations in literature is the Mom's Choice Award.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful award. Your book was actually recognized by the Mom's Choice Awards. You also won a couple other awards, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell me about them.
Yes, so I won the gold in Mom's Choice, and I also won first place in Reader's Favorite in their spiritual Christian living category, and I also won in the storybook award. So it's received a lot of acclamates and awards for in different categories, in the parenting category. So it really crosses several, like you said, intersections, right? It's faith-based, but it's for parents. It's also for that career mom that's trying to balance it all.
hold up your book and tell me where we can get a copy of it. I love this book. Love this book.
Yes.
Prayerful Warrior Mom, Tracy Ripley, where can I get a copy of this?
So it's available on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Also on my website, prayerfulwarrior.com. I sell it directly and through Ingram.
Thank you for being here with us today, Tracy. We are at Zoom into Books, American Library Association, Philadelphia. Pick up a copy of Prayerful Warrior. Thank you for being with us, Tracy.